Hello, my name is Omar Abasad. It's 7:12 p.m., March 27, 2020. And I've been tweeting, been following the news and all the updates and so on, and been making comments about some of the things that's going on. Obviously, I don't agree with what's being done and the way it's been handled, this whole crisis. I'm following the law, and I suggest that people do, because if you don't, you're going to get in trouble, because the I'm trying to find the right words here. I know the politicians that we put in place the bodies that we see in front of the microphone, in front of the camera every day. But I have to wonder whether the words are somebody else's. Because in each country, in a crisis, if a country is facing a dilemma, that country takes actions according to that country's needs. But what we're seeing is a uniform approach to this crisis globally. So obviously there is collaboration as to the uniformity of the approach. That to me seems abnormal, because every situation is different, every country is different. Every population would react differently to a virus or an infection. The rate of dying or getting sick, really sick, would be different for every country, every region. Because let's face facts. Our weather is different. Our healthcare system is different. Our being, the level of our general well-being are different for each country. So the way that a population reacts to an environmental crisis or a disease would vary from region to region, country to country. But what we're seeing is a uniform approach to this, which is man-made, of course, because if there's a virus in a region, and it's known, and the region is shut down, then of course it's contained. It cannot spread. If it's spread by human beings, and the human beings in the spot that it starts are contained and treated, then there's no spread, right? That would be protecting the herd, the global herd. But that didn't happen. So it was spread globally from country to country, even small islands, like in the island that I was born in, Trinidad. You're getting the same protocol, the same response, step-by-step approach to the crisis. So you have to wonder whether it was, putting aside whether the virus itself is man-made or not, that's a whole different question. And I don't think it's one that it would ever be known. Or maybe I could be wrong, it could be known by studying the virus itself. But of course, I'm not in a position to make comments on that, because I don't have a clue. But the response itself globally has caused me to question whether there is a broad end to the whole thing, which my tweets reflect. And that perspective came about by my own experience here at 25 Bamberg Circle. I've been monitored, I was flagged. Of course, there was absolutely no disclosure from anybody at any point in time this whole process. I am tweeting about what I hear and what I experience. So I am talking about the conclusions I've drawn from my experience. There's been no official disclosure of anything. So I'm flagged with the cops by people like PK, who's a Chinese trafficker in the building, and he claims a government contractor. So a government contractor who works with a pimp obviously is a criminal. So I am not sure which contractor, which government agent he's working with. But you know, the government agent who works with a criminal is a criminal. So he claims that he's working with the quote unquote the government, and he solicited me and he harassed me sexually. And there are rumors in the building, and he heard from other units certain things about me, and he solicited me. So based on that whole scenario and that the ongoing push to get me mentally committed, and some cops coming to my door and insisting that I'm mentally ill when I talk about being gang stalked and being monitored by the people who are contracting from the cops, of course, shows it's a cover-up. It's a clear cover-up, and my knees being pulsed right now. That's my knee. And my obliques is being pulsed as well. So I'm speaking from my own experience here. So I've learned to question the cops because the cops lied to me. The cops, I almost got killed in their custody. I was tortured in custody. I was falsely charged. I was pulled out, slammed against the wall for a mental evaluation based on PK's lies and his team's lies. And the people who are working with him, are people like him in the building. And it was an attempt to keep me in for 3 days. And it wasn't successful, and it's ongoing. That attempt is ongoing. So I heard that my family's been infiltrated as well. So I heard there is always a court date. For 15 years now, there's been submissions for court dates to submit information to have me mentally committed. So serve me a writ or a warrant to have me mentally committed. So since there is no emergency, the writ has to be, and I've demonstrated today, I did a really good video, and I matched up the high RF readings to heart palpitations and arrhythmia. And that is a consistent finding. Every time I get arrhythmia detected on my monitor, the blood pressure monitor, the RF readings are over 500 or in the vicinity. Consistent reading, consistent. It never fails. And I actually predicted it. So a crisis could be generated. So based on my experience, the coronavirus crisis could be man-made, could be generated. And since PK and his teams are using directed energy weapons to track, or else I would not be documenting these signals. These signals are not in my head. This is the fourth detector I'm using. Not this, actually, this one here. The spectrum analyzer is the fourth detector I'm using that gives me exactly the same results. So crisis could be generated to be taken advantage of, to be pulled out, to be disabled, to be labeled, to be famed, to take you out of your workplace, job loss, impoverishment, and of course, to lose your home, lose your family, and go on social assistance. And the government will take care of you. The only problem with that is long-term. I mean, if you're sick for a year and you're on EI for a year looking for work, that's different. You know, it's not long-term. But to go on it long-term until, retirement age, it does something to your psyche. And I'm speaking for myself, it takes away something, because as human beings, we need to create, we need a sense of fulfillment, and we get that from work. We get that from earning money, our own money that we created, in a sense. from our labor. You know, you work and you get paid, and you feel like you've earned it. At least that's the way I view it. I don't like taking money, um, free money. Even money I would borrow or get from my family, I give back something. Even if I don't give back the money itself, I give back in some form. So to me, being on the dole is not an option. I do not want to be on the dole. Did I say that right? Okay, I do not want to be on government assistance unless I'm sick or disabled and I have absolutely no choice. I'd rather be working. And to be able to do that, then the economy has to be functioning. So while I'm fine to go along with the way this crisis has been handled, short term, and I don't intend to break the law, or I am not telling anybody to break the law. Definitely when something is being handled a certain way, when it's done and it's analyzed, a different perspective is going to be put on it by people who's been affected. That is something that could be handled at that point in time. So, of course, for now we are grounded. So we're going to stay grounded. We're going to stay grounded for short term, for as long as we're told to be grounded, I'd imagine. But keep in mind that we are not completely grounded. We live in a world where emails and electronic communication makes a huge difference. A huge difference. The people who are making these policies are listening. Hopefully, they are listening, and hopefully they realize that while scientists and doctors in the scientific world claim to be the know-alls, I'm not going to say know it all. I mean the people who have the final say. Know it all is slightly insulting, and I don't mean to be insulting. But in our atmosphere right now, in our environment right now, in our thought processes right now, in our mindset, we think that the doctors and the scientists is the be all and end all of everything. And while definitely their opinions should weigh heavily on your decision-making process, my opinion is there are other ways of dealing with sickness: meditation, yoga, boosting your immune system, fresh air, exercise. All these things are necessary to recuperate. The amount of stress that we're dealing with, the constant, for me personally, the constant updates. When the alert went out on my cell phone, I didn't know beforehand, so it just made me jump out of my skin. Number one, and I thought, oh my God, there is something going on in the area. We're going to have to evacuate. That's the first thing that came to mind. We'd have to evacuate. And I was, for a few seconds, I was, I was scared. And it leaves an imprint in your psyche every time that happens. Because the last time it happened, when the nuclear plant did a false alarm, I could still hear the sound in my head. It traumatizes you. Traumatized me. And I'd imagine it traumatized young kids as well who have cell phones. In my opinion, this was not necessary. An alert like that telling you to stay inside of your house um, unless you absolutely have to go out. Well, going out to do exercise is an absolute must in order to stay healthy. Getting fresh air, because I live in a condominium complex, and I live in a predominantly Chinese area. And there's a lot of folks living in my building, excuse me. And the air is being circulated throughout the building. I would think that if there is one person who's infected in this building, the entire building is infected by now, because we're all inside and we're not boosting our immune system with fresh air and exercise by going outside. So to me, this part of it is counterintuitive. Going outside, walking in a open space with nobody around should not be. It's not something that is necessary, in my opinion. Like somebody, like our politicians should not make a law that says, well, you know, we are in a state of emergency because we are fighting a virus. If we are fighting somebody with a gun outside our door, and somebody dropped a bomb somewhere and our lives were in danger, and somebody said, stay inside. Absolutely. Absolutely. That we are fighting a virus and the virus is in my building. I am absolutely positively sure that it's in my building and every other apartment building in Toronto and in around the world that has tall buildings, office buildings, that circulate the air. I'm absolutely sure we're all carriers by now. I don't mind taking a test. I absolutely will take a test. I have no problem with that. But it doesn't make sense to be told to stay indoors when we are fighting a virus in which 90% of the people do not get sick. And only maybe 0.1 or 2%, I think it's less than that, might be hospitalized. And the CDC website quote the numbers between 10 to 80,000 dying every year since 2010 of the common cold. That's 80,000 people. And that's in the States alone, not globally. So the numbers for the last time I checked, it was 10,000 globally for the virus. How is that an emergency when the common cold was not an emergency? 3,000 people die of cancers and heart attacks every single day in the States. That's 1 million plus per year. That's not an emergency. How is the coronavirus? Yes, it came from China. And yes, they could have said something earlier. But how is that an emergency? It does not make sense. Anyway, so let me, well, I did a lot of videos of the signals, and my legs are being pulsed right now. Here, there's my legs right there. Yeah. My back. Chest. And I just burped. So red alert, power is turned up. So I posted a report about Trinidad being orange alert. So I was red alerted quite a few times in the last 10 years. And every time I was red alerted, the signals were increased and I started getting heart palpitations. Almost died quite a few times. I ended up in hospital quite a few times. Red alert. My point is is the coronavirus being used as a cover for people like PK and dirty officials in all the right places experimenting on us, using red alerts, pumping up the microwave signals on old people, vulnerable people, children, killing them off, hyping up the numbers, scaring the hell out of us when normally not so many people would die. Keep in mind, there are countries like China that would use covert means to terrify the world, to blackmail countries into submitting to them, giving them contracts. President Trump talked about that. So there's a lot of factors going on behind the scenes. That's my point. Free money is nice, but free money doesn't make us better human beings.